Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.
Welcome to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. I'm Kelly Mesher-Collins at the Diocese of Des Moines. On today's show, we're talking about the regionalization of Des Moines Catholic Schools. Our guests today are Donna Bishop, Diocesan Superintendent of Catholic Schools, and Dr. Dan Ryan, President of Dowling Catholic High School, who is helping lead the regionalization. But before we get to today's interview, let's find out what's on the Bishop's mind.
Looking forward to that conversation with Dr. Ryan and Superintendent Bishop here, the other bishop, as we sometimes say.
Yes.
It's that time where, the basketballs are bouncing all over the place.
That's right.
Des Moines Dowling Catholic girls acquitted themselves quite well in the tournament. A fine season for them. We do want to also give a certain shout out to St. Albert Catholic School. They had a performer do quite well, didn't they?
Correct.
Kelly?
Yes, they did. They had a Class 1A state bowling champion, Adam Denny. He's the Class state champion, and then there was a third place finisher, Hayden Pikorsky. Sorry if I butchered that. Yeah. So, there were 32 individual qualifiers, and St. Albert had 2 of the top 3 finishers.
The Polish doesn't just flow off your tongue naturally.
Apparently not.
Congratulations to those young men. That's a sport that's really taken off in recent years with the participation level across the country.
Mm-hmm.
So, but hopefully our participation on a different level, the level of Lent, our first full week of Lent, beginning to wind down, and that we didn't just, I think some people maybe, it's Lent, and maybe the first Sunday they find, I should do something as well. Mm-hmm. So hopefully people have prayerfully discerned. I'm not going to talk about my practices, although one of them simply would be just so that I might be ever more able to engage. I'm going to try and take some time each day just refreshing my Spanish study, a few years ago. So hopefully, the Holy Spirit will help me to kind of reclaim and remind me of some of those gifts I had. Mm-hmm. And so it's a very practical thing. But Pope Francis in his Lenten message is encouraging us all to take seriously this human tenets that we have, to kind of be dispersed in our spiritual life and our heart and focus, and the things in our weakness. He uses that word concupiscence, that tendency towards selfishness, which is a dead-end path that the evil one wants to kind of have us kind of locked in, if we will. So the kinds of addictions that might be there. And he does mention in the course of that digital media can be one of those forces luring us into things that will kind of empty out and make our human relationships very shallow. Mm-hmm. So I think about some of the men who are preparing for priesthood. We're having them now, the revision to take what's called a kind of year of preparation, a propedeutic year. But one of the things that they come to appreciate is the media fast that they voluntarily undertake during that time. And so I think it just kind of gives them a new awareness and attentiveness to the reality that's unfolding around them. And so I think maybe this could be one of the great delights that people enjoy and experience this. So that'll be a great thing. And so I think that can be one of the things. This coming weekend, just to give a shout out to my own family, making it personal, looking forward on Sunday, the 13th, celebrating my uncle, Monsignor Ralph Symington's 60th anniversary of priestly ordination. Uncle Ralph has been such an inspiration. My brother Tom referred to it a few weeks ago on the show, but his own love of Jesus. He's just a gregarious people person. I always speak of him as a kind of hug in potentia. People just, that desire to embrace. And so even though he's knowing a few more systemic weaknesses, his joy, and I think people will love to celebrate the liturgy with him and to do that. And it also happens to be my mom's 89th birthday. Oh. But little brother, once again takes center stage, and my mom in all her humility too, kind of supporting that. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one of the things that we're going to be about. Next week, I'll be looking to be part of the USCCB Committee on Catholic Education. I've been invited to be a member of that, and no good deed goes unpunished. And so now I'll be asked to be chair of the Higher Education Working Group for the USCCB. Mm-hmm. So that'll give a great opportunity to facilitate dialogue among some college presidents, Catholic college, university presidents, and bishops around the country, and just how can we continue to deliver our mission, not only as we're so invested, as we're going to hear at the regionalization of our own Des Moines Metro Catholic schools in a few moments, but that kind of continuum of that mission that extends out, whether it's Mercy College of Health Sciences in our diocese, but all those other institutions that continue in young adulthood to form our young people. And so it'd be great to be part of that conversation, and hopefully God will use us as He wills.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll visit with Donna Bishop and Dr. Dan Ryan about the regionalization of Catholic schools in Des Moines. You're listening to Make It Personal with Bishop Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network.
This is Dale Ahlquist with a Chesterton Minute. Have you ever heard people say that Christianity is barbaric, that it arose in ignorance? Well, G.K. Chesterton says that as a matter of historical fact, it didn't. It arose in the most civilized period the world has ever seen. It arose precisely at the intersection of three great civilizations, Athens, Rome, and Jerusalem. It combined the philosophy of the first two with the faith of the third. So what's the real reason the opponents of Christianity do not believe it? It's not because it's barbaric and ignorant. It's not even because it's civilized and sophisticated. It's because, as Chesterton says, opponents of Christianity would believe anything except Christianity. Want more than a minute? Visit us at chesterton.org.
Welcome back. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. On today's show, we're talking about the regionalization of Des Moines Catholic Schools. Our guests today are Donna Bishop, Diocesan Superintendent of Catholic Schools, and Dr. Dan Ryan, President of Dowling Catholic High School, who is helping lead the regionalization.
So good to have you, Superintendent, and I'll call you Donna because we work and collaborate so well, and Dr. Ryan or Dan, if I can call you that as well.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you for having us.
And you can call me Bishop Joensen. That's right. So the inequity. But a lot of action on the hardwood these days, but I think our mind is something that's been in Genesis for some time that preceded my coming here. But Donna, you knew when you came to be superintendent 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago, right?
You and I came about the same time.
Right.
I recall quite frequently being told new bishops in town.
Right. And you came, although a native of northwest Iowa from Omaha, there's diocese there where you'd worked and some things as well. So, yeah, and very avid recreationalist and all sorts of things, climbing, or all things. So, very active woman. Dr. Ryan, you're a native of Council Bluffs, yeah?
Native of the diocese, Council Bluffs, and been around Iowa in several different positions in Catholic education over about the last 21 years. So checked a lot of boxes over the years. So.
Yeah, and some of your educational background in Nebraska, but you've also worked with the disadvantaged youth in Colorado and other places too. So
actually, yes, that was an interesting start to the career. I worked in a juvenile detention center, and so that was quite a change from raised and going through Catholic education. K through 12, but learned a great deal there and worked in special ed and eventually got into administration and back here in Iowa at both the elementary and high school level and even at superintendent's level in the Sioux City Diocese.
Yeah, that's beautiful, that human experience you have, and not just training to be vice president, principal for discipline, but really seeing other things going on. But There was a plan that was afoot, and I remember meeting you on the day of my press conference, both of you, and kind of engaging. Mm-hmm. But I think something that was to look at the area and how we continue to be stewards of the mission of education that Jesus has entrusted to us. And maybe, Donna, maybe you could just tell us why this recommendation to create a regional system.
Well, actually, it came about from the study of the Meitler Plan that was started out, and it, the Meitler Plan was about 3 years ago. As you stated, it was started before you and I had arrived, and the plan was to look at models that had been successful across the United States, and it's definitely been successful in Catholic schools. The success comes from the efficiencies of what that model brings. And so currently each of our schools are running solo, attached to just a single parish. And the responsibility of running that school is solely on that pastor and on the principal. So the regional model will bring those schools together in a system that's going to enhance the operations through collaborations and leveraging. So buying power as well as human resources and accounting that each of our schools is currently running separately and managing separately.
Okay, that goes great over. Please. Nick.
Well, and then again, I was here a few years before the two of you arrived, and some of that agree with the Meitler report coming out, but there was kind of a subsection that came out of that on the Des Moines Catholic School region, the 12 Catholic schools that are in the metro area here in Des Moines, and how could they work together? It's kind of a unique setting to have one high school and the 11 elementaries, and so that led to a lot of the things that you're seeing now now, and with a little pause for COVID as well. So.
Of course, for all of us, that there. But you talk about, Donna, the role of the pastor and the principal, and yet I think the conversations, not only engaging them, but there were a lot of other background conversations, right, in different areas, and I know you were facilitating some of that, Dan.
Right. So at the very beginning, it was a very foreign concept to the Des Moines population, the Catholic community, and so we really had to do a lot of the basic legwork there. And for example, I remember over summer, about 5 months, I worked with a governance group, and a lot of times people don't understand what that is. Well, that's really setting up what authorities reside in what areas. And in a Catholic institution, the bishop needs to have reserve authorities. The pastors have certain authorities canonically. And then you even have the civil situation. So we just made some very broad recommendations there. Also very important in that first review was the financial situation. This is going to help the mission, but there's also a strong financial piece, both in what kind of revenue would we need, because we realized pretty quickly that one of the really big issues is teacher compensation. And that ties back to so many parts of this. We're really a people business, and if we're going to have excellence for everyone, regardless of where they sit and what school, it shouldn't have any effect on that. But we knew there was huge disparities, and this is where we were discovering that at this time in teacher pay. Dowling pays the same as public schools, but there was about a $17,000 difference between a starting teacher at Dowling and some of our elementaries. That's about 25-30% difference. So the focus then became, how do we come up with these funds to compensate them so we all have excellence? So that was really a big part of that initial phase.
All right. So,
it was definitely a driving force for me accepting the position, because I had the opportunity of taking a Meitler plan, strategic plan, implementing it, and seeing the successes from it. So when I was with the Archdiocese of Omaha, so to be able to come into the Diocese of Des Moines and be able to follow another strategic plan, it was just an exciting opportunity to be able to continue to look proactive in education versus that reactive of making sure that our schools remain for the future.
Excellent. So I'm sure that's one of the pieces of your portfolio that attracted Bishop Pates, and as he made that decision to bring you and to honor that all that you're about, and as superintendent of the entire diocese, but obviously the Des Moines region is a key piece of that. That there's a certain solidarity. We think about Catholic social teaching, the solidarity that we experience, that we're all participating in this mission, whether we even have a school on site at our own campus, but at the same time to respect that kind of local culture and everything that. And so what are some of the wrinkles or the reassurances that Donna and Dan, you're trying to offer to people as we go forward? Because this is going to, if there's an evolution and something is dynamically moving, that's going to also stir some apprehension for people who really have appreciated what's been in place for decades.
Yes, and we've been working on that quite a bit. In fact, just Thursday night, Don and I were at a meeting with the principals, the local board chair, the head of the local parent organization or home and school, whatever name they give that. But what we've kind of termed that area to be is local identity. And one of the things we're saying is, our parochial schools are not broken. That is not what we're saying here. They all have wonderful strengths and wonderful individual traits, and they have that sense of ownership in a parish, and those are strengths we want to keep. But we also know some of them haven't been able to fiscally pull together a plan that they're really able to do what we were talking about with teacher pay. So one of our mantras has kind of been, let's keep our strengths while fixing our weaknesses. So there is some cautious optimism out there, I'll say it in a positive light. And people have been open to this and say that, but they're also asking a lot of questions, which I have no problem with. That makes complete sense because we have these wonderful institutions. Let's be careful before we start shaking the box, so to speak. So we really are looking to say, how can we strengthen this local vision that they understand what St. Augustine's been great at, what Christ the King has done really well. We have schools that are specialized in STEM. We have schools that are specialized in bilingual education. We're not asking for those things to change. We're working more behind the scenes and maybe even finding a way to create a process going into next year where we sharpen that local vision and even get it on paper. So there's an idea of where we want to be in a few years, especially with all these changes going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we mention our teachers. They're implicated in all this. I think that we want to honor them and those who really sense a call to be present in parochial education, and maybe are making some human sacrifices to make that happen. That we can soften that gap and honor that vocation and the professionalism that they bring. At the same time, there's some accountability that goes with that, and that those who are delivering, in this way. Obviously, I'm mindful of the pastors, and they were their own group. Each of them has a certain independence in that role of pastor and being pastor to the pastors. Mm-hmm. I have really appreciated the collaboration with you and bringing that along. Can you just talk about that process where we worked directly with the priests and how that went?
Mm-hmm. So really, there's been meetings meetings the last 18 to 24 months. And those meetings not only took place with the pastors, but the administrators, the parents, school board members, and as Dan had shared, home and family parents as well, and just really taking the process from understanding the education piece of it. What is it? So when you hear regionalization, what does that mean? What is it? What are the efficiencies? Why is it effective? Why is it a positive thing to move forward in? And then getting a clear understanding for them as to what their role is going to look like. As a pastor's role today is a lot different than what it will be as it moves forward, allowing them to be those spiritual leaders versus taking on that heavy burden of working 2 full-time positions with the school and as well with the parishes. So it'll also give the opportunity for those teachers to really move themselves into what they are now expected to do as educational leaders, and the opportunity for them to focus on more in the classrooms with those teachers and take off that management aspect that they're currently having to do at the same time. So
I could add on to that. The meetings with the pastors were particularly good over time, and there were a lot of questions up front, but over 18 months and meeting every 2 weeks, I think the relationships really grew. I think you may have both seen that, and it got to the point of saying, well, what are the concerns? Let's write them down. Let's start talking about them. It kind of was let's bring the issue to the table. Let's talk about it. We'll come back. I worked very closely with Dr. Deegan on that, and we'd come back with, okay, how about this? Would this solve the problem? Or what do you have to add to it? And so it became very collaborative, and I think it built the relation. So I think, like speaking from the Dowling point of view, I think our pastors feel a lot closer to Dowling Catholic in that way as well, and that's where we can have the greatest fulfillment of the mission, is working together.
Mm-hmm. And pastors, their hearts are with their own people, and with that can be a kind of protective mode. A good shepherd looks after his own sheep, and I think that's where that trust that was sown. And again, their own identity. For some, really do kind of gravitate and take solace in the administrative yoke, because that's a very tangible thing that they've delivered. They've balanced the budget. They've paid the bills. But to be a spiritual father takes an even greater dimension of faith, and to see how with the families and teachers, administrators alike, that we're all in the process of conversion. We're all called to even greater maturity in Christ, including the parents of our young people. And so this really is an initiative of evangelization that is going to hopefully free up the spiritual resources and that charge that's given not just to the pastors, but continuing to develop the teachers in this regard. I too, myself, ever more convicted that this is what we need to be about. And I think, the pastors ultimately approached me and, with Dr. Deegan and yourselves to make those recommendations. So, when it comes from them as a kind of ground up request and is not being imposed, even though, as you say, there are reserved authorities that the bishop possesses, it makes it easier to believe that this is an impetus of the Spirit working in our lives. And so I think it's something exciting, but here we go. And Dr. Deegan has ridden off into the sunset. No,
I think he's warm in Arizona.
Yeah,
right
good
now.
for him. I hope he's getting that handicap down a little bit, on the golf course as well. And because you didn't have enough on your plate, Dr. Ryan, as president of Dowling Catholic High School, the implementation, interim coordinator on that, and So, how would you respond to people who say, "Well, this is just the gorilla in the room, Dowling," is kind of, we'll just kind of name some of these.
Well, I do understand what you're saying there, and you could say that's a really wonderful thing, or they may be concerned about again that the region or somebody imposing something on them. So a good example of how we're being careful about this and working together is the fact of how are we rolling this out. So with the pastors, we had this conversation. I know you both heard this as well. We almost had a joke of, we'll form the region, we'll create a board. It'll be a board over nothing at first, right? Because it's an infant, and so it's going to be a slow process. This first year, not just the first year. We want to maintain all of the schools in the current locations with their current grades. They're running their own budgets this coming year. We're focusing more on the business operations and taking time. To get the teacher compensation where it needs to be and to get the tuition assistance in place is going to be a 5 to 7 year process. So it's going to be a slow and gradual process, but I think this is also where we've talked about we're here to do something with you, not to you. And that means there's a lot of meetings, and the pastors really got to that point. And so now we're working with the principals. We're working with local boards. We're having another meeting next month. We did the exact same thing. We brought up issues they had identified, and we collaborated. We'll bring a proposal. We'll give feedback. So it's that sense of collaboration, really a sense of the Holy Spirit being there with us.
Amen. And, the fingerprints of peace, that ultimately peace will come to that. So if you're willing to hang with us a little bit more after the break, we'd love to continue this conversation about regionalization of Des Moines Catholic School Region. So.
We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio provided by the Sarah Vocations Ministry, including the St. Sarah Club of Des Moines and the Sarah Club of Council Bluffs. Sarah is an apostolate of the Worldwide Catholic Church dedicated to fostering and supporting priesthood and religious vocations. Sarahans strive to accomplish their mission through prayer, fellowship, and service to the bishop, priests, sisters, and all in religious formation, and in doing so to increase their own holiness. Learn more at joinsarah.org, joinsera.org. Thank you, Sarahans, for your support of Iowa Catholic Radio.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by CTO. What great news for donors to the Catholic Tuition Organization. You now receive 75%. Yes, 75% of your donation back in Iowa tax credits beginning January 1st of this year. Your support has helped thousands of students attend our Catholic schools. Best gift ever. Online, ctoiowa.org. At CTO, the bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
Welcome back to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. We are back with Donna Bishop and Dan Ryan talking about the Des Moines region of Catholic schools.
And we appreciate the forbearance of our brothers and sisters in the western part of the diocese and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network, but this is a significant thing. We shouldn't presume either, Donna, that people know what we're talking about when we talk about the Des Moines region and the Des Moines Regional Catholic Schools. So what schools are we talking about?
So the region is going to consist of 11 elementaries and then our one high school to make a preschool through 12th grade system. And so 7 of those 11 elementaries are in that Des Moines metro. So they consist of St. Anthony, St. Augustine, Christ the King, Holy Family, Holy Trinity, St. Joe's, and St. Teresa's, along with Sacred Heart, which is in West Des Moines, St. Pius in Urbandale, St. Francis in Waukee, and St. Luke's in Ankeny. Those are all the feeder schools into Dowling Catholic, which will be the high school that makes up the 12 schools within the Des Moines Diocese that will be a part of this region.
Do we locate St. Francis in West Des Moines? Or
it is, yeah. St. Francis is in
the
West.
People in St. Boniface are saying, what?
St. Francis is actually in the Waukee School District.
Ah,
yes. Yeah.
Very instructive.
Many confusing lines out in that area.
Yeah, there are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they make up, the 12 of our 16 schools that are within the Diocese of Des Moines Catholic Schools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then when we think about the region, and this has been part of the dialogue with pastors, bringing in those parishes that don't, because they are also allied with us in this mission, and that the ability to send young people to schools neighboring or whatever, and that collaboration that's going on with that. But good. COVID has ultimately, the cross that it has been for so many of us and those who've lost loved ones, we continue to ask God to give them consolation and peace. But a blessing in some ways for our Catholic schools.
It actually has been. When we went 100% remote due to the governor shutting down all of our schools in the state of Iowa, it gave an opportunity for our parents to actually see inside our classrooms and the great work that our faculty and staff, as well as our administrator, put forth. And so we then moved open 100% on site, which some of our public schools chose not to do. So many of our schools saw increased enrollment with that opportunity to have experienced and move their students into our private schools, Catholic schools. That growth continued. They got a chance to see it, experience it, and they loved it. So when our world started to come back to normal this school year, they chose to keep their students in our Catholic schools. And so we do have open seats still. And we started registration for next year, and we do have a little over, right around 800 seats that are open across our entire diocese. So we really encourage anyone that has not had the opportunity to experience Catholic education, come in and do some shadow days with us before the end of the school year and find out, what we're all about.
Right, because this belief in faith that every young person has a right to have access to the Catholic education.
Absolutely.
And we talked about the teachers and trying to enhance their compensation in a just way so that people's begin to add up numbers, Dan, and say what would be the impact on, as we think about accessibility, what do we do? And ultimately the Ignite campaign comes into the conversation too.
Yeah, very much so. And it's about the fact of we have to be just with our teachers about the revenue side and making sure they're compensated, and that's an excellence for their children in the classroom. But it's really about providing sufficient tuition assistance in the future to match those tuition increases so it's affordable for all. And even those in the middle class who maybe didn't qualify for assistance in the past. Dowling sees that often, that people are surprised that they're qualifying from our funds. But Ignite, when we reach that goal, is going to be a major boom. We've also increased the funding that goes to the Catholic Tuition Organization, or CTO. So we are looking at very significant increases of over $1 million to perhaps $2 million of new tuition assistance in the coming 3 to 5 years. And that will do a great amount to offset those new costs.
Indeed. And so Jesus charged to us to be wise as serpents, simple as doves. And I think that's being embodied in this initiative of the Des Moines Regional Catholic Schools. Thanks to both of you for being with us.
Well, thank you.
This has been another edition of Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen.
You can hear Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen every week on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Making It Personal is provided by Sarah Vocations Ministry. Learn more at joinserra.org.